Usually at this time, I'm doing physical therapy, and I'm also at my own Bible study. I'm doing a Bible study on Wednesday, so so hello. I used to work with middle school. I remember I worked with middle school when I first got out of college, so practically half my teaching life I was with middle schoolers, and I had a youth pastor that said, you know, if you don't want to grow old, work with middle school kids. He goes, but if you want to grow old fast, work with middle school kids. So it's one of, this was a laugh when I think it's funny, okay? Not when you think it's funny. Laugh. Anyway, I can tell this is going to be a rough crowd. Okay, but anyway, I'm going to talk about choosing the right friend. And before I begin, I want to show the first picture. This right here, now this is middle school, can you believe it? Of my awkward age. But that girl right there is my friend Shannon. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this friendship I've had with Shannon. We met in middle school at a birthday party, and I had just moved from Iowa to Minnesota. My dad worked for IBM, and so we moved around a lot. And we used to say that IBM meant for I've been moved. So I don't think that I've lived in a place more than 4 years growing up. It was kind of like being in the military. We moved a lot. And when I went to Minnesota, I was going into the 8th grade, and it's tough being in middle school anyway, but when you're going right into middle school at the end and everybody else is friends, it's pretty tough. But there was this one girl, they were very friendly. Thankfully, I went to a Christian school, and one girl named Becky was gonna have her 13th birthday party. I don't know if they do that today, but back then, the big thing was to have slumber parties. And so she invited me to the slumber party, and I'm surprised my dad allowed me to go, because we had only been there for 3 weeks, and he was very, very strict. He didn't let me go to places where he didn't know the family, but he let me go. And back then, we didn't have social media, we didn't have caller ID, we didn't have a lot of things, we didn't have video games. We had to go to the arcade for video games. So you could show the next picture. We would go to the video, we were there, so what we had to do is entertain myself. Now, we like to match, which is probably so uncool now, but Shannon and I, and love those culottes, we call them culottes. We weren't allowed to wear pants, so that is what they forced us to wear. So if you think you feel awkward, you should have been grown up like that. Anyway, so Shelly and Shannon, I wish I still had that waist though, but we did everything together. But that night, the girls wanted to go and TP people's houses, you know what that is, right? Go paper people's houses and play doorbell ditch. Now you can't really do that anymore because of the ring, okay? We ring the doorbell and we'd run and hide and caller ID. We would call people and hang out. Do silly things that middle school teenagers do, and we knew we couldn't get caught because there's no such thing as caller ID, and they didn't have the videos that they could see who was ringing the doorbell, so we did those things. But Shannon and I didn't go out to TP, and I'm not saying we didn't do it because we were good kids. I think it was because we both were afraid of the dark, and we were too lazy to go running around the neighborhood. So we sat back and we just started talking. I didn't really know Shannon for anything. I just met her at the party, but we just sat and talked and got to know each other. You could go ahead and, okay, our birthdays are close together. I'm going to show you, just keep going and then that way. So we can stop right there. So Shannon and I had grown close, but the thing was, I was in Minnesota for 2 years, my 8th and 9th grade year, and then we left, and we moved again. I've been moved. We moved back to New Jersey, and the thing was that we were so close, and our parents made it possible for us to stay connected. We couldn't stay connected through texting. There was no such thing. To call someone long distance cost money, so we would have to wait until a certain time at night. But the time difference was hard because it was late in New Jersey. I was 2 hours ahead, and then when I moved to California, she was 2 hours ahead. So calling each other was tough. See, I moved around a lot. And then, but one of the things that our dads did is when I moved, it sounds like a lot of money back then, but it's not. Her dad and my dad, they gave us a $20 bill and they ripped it in half. And they said, the next time you meet, you're gonna tape it together, and you guys can go out and eat. And $20, like I said, you can't get anything for $20, but back then you could. And so we did that every summer. So one summer I'd go to Minnesota, the next summer Shannon would come to New Jersey. And I'm really thankful for our parents letting us do that, because they knew the connection was real. So we stayed close, and we all these years. Now you can go to the next picture. What I'm talking about today is talking about having the good friends. So the next picture, so we were at each other's weddings. I didn't find a picture. Now, a good friend, Shannon was with me when I had cancer. I lost all my hair and it was growing back. So she came to visit me when I had to stay in rehab. You can go to the next picture. And then as the years, you can just keep going. As the years, we're getting older, and there, I'm growing my hair back. Keep going. Some of these aren't. So then I was in a wedding, and right here, I was in her nephew's wedding, which her brother, and then you can go to the next one. I'm going to show these pictures and that's her oldest son, and then we were in the hospital, or there, and then that's her grandbaby, and now those are her parents, so they became my parents. He's the one that would always give us the money, because he had more money, and then that's the last one, and then the next picture, I think it's the last picture. Oh, I think one more. I think that's it. Maybe that's the last one. Okay, that's the last one. But I'm talking about friends, the friends that we could end up being family with one another. I am 57 years old now, and if you think about it, 57 minus 13, that's 44 years of friendship. 44 years, we just became the best of buddies. And we don't live close to each other. She still lives in Minnesota. I haven't seen her in about 4 years, but we still are connected, and when we get together, it's like we've never left. But I'm going to talk about why it matters to have friends. 44 years from now, the people that you're friends with, are you still going to be friends with them? Are they the kind of friends that you want to introduce you to your spouse someday? Do you want your kids to call them aunt or uncle, even though they may not be by blood, but that close? So Amnon had a friend. There's a man in the Bible named Amnon. Now Amnon was King David's first son. He should have had the throne. His mom actually was weird, because his mom was a wife to King Saul, and for some reason she became David's wife and had Amnon. But Amnon had a friend, and his friend was named Jonadab. Now Jonadab was the son of King David's brother, which would make Jonadab what to Amnon? A cousin. So how many of you here are good friends with your cousins? No, sometimes cousins could be the best of friends. That's awesome. But Jonadab was a cunning, crafty man. The Bible calls him crafty, but that actually means he was deceitful. And sometimes teachers, these guys, you have students in there, and a lot of times they act good, but some of the things they're sneaky. And when you hear that they're sneaky, they kind of deceive the teacher, deceive us, thinking, oh, they're a great student, but teachers know. And people know. But that sounds harmless. Amnon had a friend, yay. But this friend did not help him to do what's right. Amnon wanted to do something that was very wicked. The Bible talks about it in the Bible. And instead of going to Jonadab and saying, I have this problem, I want to do such and such, Jonadab's like, go ahead and do it. You're the king's son. You won't get in trouble. Just go ahead. Who cares? You're the firstborn. You're going to be king someday. You won't have any consequences. And so he encouraged him to sin, and Amnon did. He sinned. And the thing is, Jonadab should have said, stop. That's not right. That's wicked. That will hurt people. That's disobedient to God. But he supported a decision that deeply harmed someone and shattered relationships within a family. And you know what, kids, I can call you kids, you're not kids, but it did not just affect Amnon. Mm-hmm. Sin doesn't affect just one person. If you read the Bible, you will see that consequences happened to not only the person who sinned, but sometimes to the family, sometimes to innocent people. Even sometimes there's a story in the Bible where Korah, he was rebellious against Moses, and the earth swallowed him up, but just not only him, his family. His family got swallowed up by the earth too. And his children, those people that were probably innocent, and his cattle and his dogs and whatever. And I can guarantee a dog was innocent, but yet they had the consequences for sin. It affected his sister, it affected his brother, it affected the entire household. It led to anger, revenge, and destruction. But this is what you need to understand, that sin, like I said, doesn't just affect one person, it always spreads further than we expect. And sin will take us farther than we want to go. You talk about the people that are probably in jail now for choosing the wrong decisions and making bad choices. They probably didn't wake up in the morning and say, I want to do this, and I want to go to jail someday. When you're little and you ask the kindergarten kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're not going to say, oh, I want to be prisoner number 575. No, they're going to say, I want to be a doctor. I want to be, and how does a person go from being a child that wants to be a doctor to somebody that's in prison? That is just sin. And sin that they probably didn't think would have the consequences. And it could have been a friend that encourages them. Just like I said, we went all doorbell ditching and all that stuff. Well, that's because we were encouraged to do something silly as middle schoolers. And you know middle schoolers, you know yourself, we do silly things all the time. I'm not saying we right now because I remember how I was, but we all do. And it's okay, as long as it's not hurting somebody. You don't laugh at people because they look funny or they act different or you don't think they're smart. You laugh with them. You know, they tell a joke, you laugh. We don't make fun of people. But Amnon listened to a friend who made sin easier. Proverbs 13:20 says, whoever walks with the wise men becomes wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm. Proverbs 27:6 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. That means a friend who is faithful, who loves God, will say, Chase, no, that's not right, don't do it. I'm saying Chase because Chase is such a nice, but just don't do it, because you're gonna get in trouble, you're gonna make your family sad, there's gonna be consequences. And sometimes when a friend tells you the truth, it hurts, but yet they're telling you because they love you. But it says, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Now, I'm not saying that like a real kiss, but an enemy will say, yeah, go ahead and do it. You won't suffer the consequences. And I want to tell you something first. Amnon had a friend. His cousin told him to do something right. When the consequences happened for Amnon, he was killed for what he did. Where was Jonadab? Nowhere in sight. Jonadab didn't suffer the consequences. He wasn't there to help defend Amnon. Amnon died for his sin, for what he did, but Jonadab was not there. A true friend, with Shannon, would be sitting with me when I had cancer. Her oldest daughter, had leukemia. We're there for each other in the good and the bad, no matter what. And it doesn't matter how you look, a good friend will love you and want you to serve Jesus. Sometimes, I was going to say, Jonadab didn't force Amnon to do that sin. He just encouraged it. And sometimes that's all it takes. The wrong friend normalizes what should never be normal. Tell you another group of friends, two friends. How many have ever heard of Joshua and Caleb? Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, okay? Or like 12 men went to spy on Canaan, 10 were back, okay? So Joshua and Caleb were friends. But these are the kind of friends you want. Because in Numbers 13, God told Moses to send 12 spies to the promised land to spy on Canaan. And the 12 men, they all were there. They saw the same land. They saw the same giants. They saw the same fortified city. But when they turned, 10 of them were afraid. 10 of them said, nope, we can't do it. Let's just forget about it. But Joshua and Caleb were like, what are you talking about? We can take it. Those two together, they were probably there together, looking at this, looking at it and saying, this is easy. Yeah, they're big. Yeah, they're going to be tough, but we can conquer it with God's help. They the 10 men focused on fear. They forgot about God, but the 2 men, Joshua and Caleb, stood together. Now, it's not easy to stand together when everybody's against you. When you're the only 2 out of 10, you know that you're the minority and people aren't going to listen to you. They stood their ground. And you know what's funny is, not funny, but they were the only 2 out of the 10 and over 20 that got to go into the promised land. All the people had to die before they went. Now, I would be so mad if I was walking for 40 years and because of somebody's sin, God said, no, you don't get to go into the promised land. But the crowd, they listened to the 10 men and not Joshua and Caleb. And that's the kind of friend you want to have. They strengthened each other's faith. They were godly examples. And, I just lost my place, sorry. It says, Caleb was Joshua's, when Joshua got to take over after Moses died, Caleb was his number 1 man. And Caleb had followed, even when he was about 85 years old, he was still going, I could take the land, you know, as an old man saying we could do it. He still was bold at 85. Joshua later became the leader of Israel and led the people into the promised land. Why did he get to go and not Moses? Because he followed God fully. They chose faith over fear. They chose courage over crowd opinion. They chose obedience over popularity. And the thing is, if you look through the Bible, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, those 3 stood against the thousands of people. Can you imagine? Everybody bowed down, and you're the only 3 standing. But the 3 men encouraged each other. And that's the kind of friend. So, Amnon had a friend, it led to destruction. Joshua and Caleb had each other, and it led to a blessing. One friend encourages selfishness, the other encourages faithfulness. One helps sin grow, the other helps courage grow. The question isn't just, do you have friends? But it is, what direction are the friends pointing you? This is the application I want you to take. Okay? The Bible talks about iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. You will become like the people you walk with. You don't drift towards holiness, you drift toward whatever influences you most. So choose wisely. I want you to ask yourself, am I choosing friends who help me follow Jesus? It may be hard, but also ask, am I that kind of friend? Are you a Jonadab or are you a Joshua? Because someone is becoming braver or weaker, are they becoming that way because of you? And one day, many years from now, you will look back and you'll realize that you became who you partly are because of who you walked with. Choose the friend who helps you walk towards God. Choose the friend who helps you stand. And maybe 44, 45 years from now, you can still have that friend, be part of their family. And that friend right now is still serving God in the same church where we met 44 years ago. Let's pray. Dear Jesus,